Landslides wreak havoc across China. Spurred on by heavy rain, it buried houses and damaged roads and bridges. Over 900 documents verify U.S. funds backed research on various coronaviruses, carried out at Wuhan's infamous Virology Institute. Chinese real estate companies are going bankrupt. They've recently been driven into crisis as authorities impose new policies on the industry. Cases of newly diagnosed leukemia appear in China. Doctors made the discovery after the patients got vaccinated. And 4 members of a pro-democracy group have been arrested in Hong Kong. It's the same group that organizes an annual June 4th rally to commemorate those who died in the bloody 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. More destruction strikes China, brought on by torrential rains. In the country's northwest, a residential building collapsed over the weekend as a landslide tore through the area. Residents were evacuated prior to the incident, and no injuries have been reported. It happened in China's Shanxi province, which, along with other parts of the country, has endured a number of incidents caused by the persistent downpours. Elsewhere in Shanxi, a group of cave-based homes also collapsed. This type of earthen housing is common in the area. The homes in the video were still under construction at the time. And in southern China, another landslide buried parts of a residential building in Sichuan. While in a neighboring province, still another landslide tore down a mountainside, covering workers' living quarters beneath. A tunnel had been under construction near the mountain. The cause of that landslide is now under investigation. More than 900 documents have been released that show the U.S. paid for research on various types of coronaviruses at the WUHAN Institute of Virology. The institute is in the Chinese city where the CCP virus first appeared.
The newly released documents were obtained by The Intercept in connection to a lawsuit against the National Institutes of Health. The documents show that EcoHealth Alliance, a U.S.-based health organization, used federal money to fund research into bat coronaviruses at the Chinese lab. The federal grant provided EcoHealth Alliance with a total of $3.1 million, including about $600,000 to use at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Part of the U.S. funds was used to identify and alter bat coronaviruses likely to infect humans, according to The Intercept. The grant was initially awarded for a 5-year period from 2014 to 2019. Funding was renewed in 2019, but suspended by the Trump administration in April 2020. Following the release of the documents, Richard Ebright, a molecular biologist at Rutgers University, wrote on Twitter, "The documents make it clear that assertions by the NIH Director Francis Collins and the NIAID Director Anthony Fauci that the NIH did not support gain-of-function research or potential pandemic pathogen enhancement at WIV are untruthful." The newly released documents will no doubt raise further questions regarding the theory that the CCP virus pandemic originated from a lab leak in Wuhan.
Now we look at the U.S.'s take on China-Taliban relations. U.S. President Biden was asked Tuesday if he was concerned China would fund the militant group, which is sanctioned under U.S. law. Here's what he said.
Well, China has a real problem with the Taliban. So they're going to try to work out some arrangement with Taliban, I'm sure.
The statement came the day the Taliban announced a new interim government in Afghanistan. The U.S. and its allies have agreed to coordinate their response to the group. And the Biden administration froze billions of dollars in Afghan reserves. But experts say much of that economic leverage will be lost if China or others provides the Taliban with funds. China, before the fall of Kabul, had already prepared to recognize the Taliban. And now China is offering $31 million in aid to Afghanistan. Announced on Wednesday, the package includes food and CCP virus vaccine doses. China was among the first countries to establish contact with the Taliban when they swept to power. The Chinese embassy in Kabul remains open, and its top envoy has met senior Taliban officials. China has not officially recognized the Taliban as Afghanistan's new rulers. But Beijing has urged the international community to engage with the militant group and positively guide them. And even last month, the CCP had started using the situation in Afghanistan to present a concept they called Chinese democracy. A Chinese foreign affairs spokeswoman claimed Chinese people enjoy people's democracy, while the United States is a money democracy. She also claimed the communist regime has maintained an above 95% approval rating in China for years. But reports suggest that number may not reflect the true situation, considering the regime's long history of clamping down on dissent and its heavy censorship. A wave of real estate company bankruptcies has struck China, one each day. According to Chinese media outlet The Time Weekly, nearly 300 real estate companies have declared bankruptcy this year. These are not only small companies. The Time found some big names on the list. For example, Evergrande Group, China's second-largest property developer, which ranks 122nd by revenue on the 2021 Fortune Global 500 list. Evergrande Group topped last year's debt list of real estate companies, with over $300 billion in debt, and a year-on-year increase of over 5%. Some industry analysts say real estate companies' credit risk exposure is moving to large and mainstream companies. The listed real estate companies can expect a harder time this year. According to China Index Academy, China's most influential property research institute, the real estate companies will soon see another peak of debt repayment in September. The total size of bond maturity is up to $13 billion. Chinese mainstream media NetEase concludes two things in common for the debt crisis. They are all private enterprises, and almost all of them have a high debt ratio and are highly leveraged. That means these entities rely heavily on government policies. And when Beijing began strengthening its regulatory measures from the second half of last year, those enterprises began rapidly shrinking. The outlet says that for the rest of the year in Chinese real estate, quote, striving to survive is not just a catchphrase, but a harsh reality. China's exporters were unexpectedly busy in August. Data out today showed overseas shipments rose by more than a quarter year-on-year. That was well ahead of analysts' forecasts. Also a big jump on July's figure. Economists were worried that fresh outbreaks and rising raw material prices could crimp growth. Instead, exports of consumer electronics, furniture, and other goods have all rebounded. A recent gridlock at major ports also seems to be eased, giving shippers a boost. Even so, manufacturers remain under pressure, partly due to the global shortage of computer chips. The service sector has also slumped into contraction again. And the Chinese regime's suppression of businesses continues today, clamping down further on private education sector. It's now banned private tutors from giving online classes. NTD's Patrick Hayden speaks to one education provider who sends English teachers to China.
China on Wednesday banned private tutors from giving classes online or in unregistered venues. That includes residential buildings, hotels and coffee shops. Earlier this year, authorities banned for-profit tutoring in school subjects. They say it's to ease the pressure on children and families.
A lot of the weekend and after-school classes, often online and offline, have been stopped. The double reduction policy that China is doing is basically aimed at reducing the amount of time and money need to be spent on education.
But parents and tutors have been trying to get around the rules. Some agencies were reportedly advertising live-in tutors who could make more than $4,500 a month.
But their parents will still have, that aim for their child to do the best that they can. And I think you'll find that there will be a lot of black market one-to-one tutoring going on, and which will require probably a lot of, teachers to teach under the table.
Under the new rules, Beijing says local authorities should set fees for registered teaching. In 2020 alone, as much as $10 billion of venture capital poured into China's tutoring sector. In July, the CCP abruptly ordered private tutoring providers to turn into non-profit organizations. The previous boom in the education sector stood to dilute China's state education system and its ideological molding, where Xi Jinping marks his thought, is core to the teaching of China's youth. The restrictions on education have coincided with the regime's effort to boost birth rates. That's as the country faces numerous demographic problems stemming from its one-child policy that started in 1980 and has only recently been relaxed. The crackdown has sent shares in education companies tumbling. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
A young man from eastern China was reportedly diagnosed with leukemia after receiving a Chinese-made vaccine. But the discovery isn't the first of its kind. Let's look at what local hospitals have to say.
I got leukemia after my vaccination. I got the shot on May 8th, and afterwards I didn't feel well all the time. I vomited and fainted on July 20th, and I was diagnosed with leukemia on the 21st in the hospital.
Gong is in his 30s. He's from eastern China's Jinan City. He said he was healthy before taking the vaccine. The Jinan City Center for Disease Control stated that Gong's leukemia has nothing to do with his vaccination. They said he signed the voluntary vaccination document and the no abnormality report on the day after the vaccination. But Gong says that the report is sheer nonsense.
The report is a bit irresponsible. I told them that my arm hurt and I felt like vomiting. But the report said there was no abnormality after the injection. And I left after half an hour. It's nonsense, sheer nonsense.
Jiang Zifu is in his 50s. He said he always had good health before his vaccination. But after being vaccinated in early June, he didn't feel well. He was diagnosed with leukemia 2 weeks later. An insider told us what happened. She accepted our interview under the condition of anonymity.
He got fever, chest tightness, and was sweating after the vaccination. He went to the hospital. The doctor said it was normal and suggested he try physically cooling down and get some medicine for his cough. Since there was basically no improvement, he finally went to Yan'an City's hospital, and he was diagnosed with leukemia. Until now, he has already spent 200,000 to 300,000 yuan.
Recently, Chinese state media published high-profile reports about a man in South Korea who was diagnosed with leukemia after receiving the Pfizer vaccine. However, no Chinese media outlets have ever reported Gong and Jiang's cases. The officials don't recognize that the leukemia could be related to the vaccine. Gong and Jiang cannot get any compensation or medical assistance. A netizen from China's megacity Shenzhen had the same experience as Gong and Jiang. She found online more than 100 people who got leukemia after their vaccination.
Beijing is forcing students to swear loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, every week. Chinese citizen Ms. Wang told the Epoch Times Monday that since the beginning of the fall semester, a notice has been circulating among students' parents. It urges students to perform an allegiance ritual each Monday at 7:30. To do it, students must wear a red scarf, a symbol of the CCP's affiliated Young Pioneers organization. They must then take an oath to listen to the party, follow the party, and be prepared to serve the country. They are also made to promise they'll do their part to strengthen the country. While making the pledge, students are directed to stand in a particular pose, the same pose that Chinese Communist Party members assume to swear loyalty to the CCP. The notice requires parents to take pictures of students performing the pledge and post them to a group chat for other parents as proof. Hong Kong police arrested 4 members of a pro-democracy group. This is the group that organizes the annual June 4th rally, which commemorates those who died in the bloody Tiananmen Square clampdown. Flora Bradley-Watson reports.
4 arrests in Hong Kong on Wednesday dealt a new blow to the city's opposition movement. Those detained are all members of the pro-democracy group that organises a yearly vigil in Hong Kong for the bloody crackdown in Tiananmen Square. The June 4th event commemorates those killed when China quashed 1989's student-led protests. Activist and barrister Chow Hang-tong was arrested along with 3 others from the Hong Kong Alliance in support of patriotic democratic movements in China. A day before her arrest, Chow spoke to reporters outside police headquarters.
The more we resist, the more they will suppress you. But whether it would be better not to resist, I don't think so. If you give up and don't fight, they will not let you go. As we have seen, they have been chasing after all the disbanded groups.
She had been at the headquarters to deliver a message to officers that the alliance would not provide the information they had requested. Last month, police had sent a letter to the organisation giving it until Tuesday this week to provide details of its membership, finances and activities. The letter accused the alliance of being an agent of foreign forces, adding that failure to comply with the deadline could result in a fine and 6 months in jail. Alliance leaders Albert Ho and Lee Chuk-yang are already in jail over their roles in anti-government protests that roared the city in 2019. The National Security Department said that investigations were ongoing and did not rule out further arrests.
Just days before police arrested the 4 members of the alliance, the organization refused a demand from Hong Kong's police department, requesting access to group members' information. The city's National Security Office accused the organization of operating as what they called a foreign agent. That's considered a crime under the national security law Beijing imposed on the former British colony last year. Police had asked the alliance to release information about group members, as well as the organization's financial details last month, giving the group until Tuesday, September 7th to respond. But over the weekend, the alliance announced that it would not submit any information to the National Security Office. It also criticized police for abusing their power and spreading fear in Hong Kong society. What's more, the organization denied acting as a foreign agent. They pointed out that authorities accused them without mentioning what country or organization they believe the alliance is working for. The group also noted its history, having been spontaneously established by Hong Kong citizens during the 1989 pro-democracy movement in Beijing. In the past, every year on June 4th, the alliance organized a candlelight vigil in a park in Hong Kong. The date marks the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989, when Beijing opened fire on unarmed student protesters gathering to ask for democracy and better access to education. The event sought to honor and mourn the victims, but for the past 2 years, the Hong Kong authorities have banned the activities. A general meeting of alliance members will be held at the end of this month. There, members will vote on whether the organization should be dissolved. A Swiss bank closed one of its client accounts in the country, reportedly citing reasons related to China. The closed account belongs to Chinese activist Weiwei. He says the bank told him in June that it wanted to close the account as soon as possible. The bank, called Credit Suisse, explained it's due to his so-called criminal records in China. But Ai says he has never been formally charged or convicted of a crime. Credit Suisse declined to comment. Ai is one of China's most high-profile artists and political activists. He helped design the Bird's Nest Stadium for the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games. But in the same year, a massive earthquake struck China's Sichuan province, and the collapsed buildings buried thousands of children. Since then, Ai began advocating for them and their families and created works of art in their honor. He has also criticized the Chinese Communist regime on a range of issues, from human rights to corruption. Soon, he found himself falling foul of the regime. In 2011, authorities detained him for about 3 months. It's not Ai's first time facing retaliation from the regime. He said he had previously faced similar actions from a bank in Germany and another one in Hong Kong, but neither offered an explanation. Ai tells Reuters he did not believe Credit Suisse would reverse its decision, adding, "Even if they do reverse this decision, I am not willing to be associated with a bank which has such a strange relationship with China." Ai said his account was in the process of being closed and could only be used in a very limited way. Many major Western banks, including Credit Suisse, have made winning business in China a central part of their strategies. And last year, Credit Suisse and others were examining whether their clients in Hong Kong had ties to the city's pro-democracy movement. The world's largest asset manager, BlackRock, is hitting back at one of the world's most famous investors, George Soros, after Soros criticized its business dealings in China. Soros had accused it of imperiling the security interests of America. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
BlackRock responds to George Soros's criticism regarding its massive investment initiative in China. Soros had written in the Wall Street Journal that pouring billions of dollars into China now is a tragic mistake. Soros says BlackRock imperils the national security interests of the U.S. because it's helping to prop up President Xi's regime, which is repressive at home and aggressive abroad. BlackRock responded. The United States and China have a large and complex economic relationship. It said through our investment activities, U.S.-based asset managers and other financial institutions contribute to the economic interconnectedness of the world's two largest economies.
It's based on greed and avarice, and I think there's also influence from the Communist Party inside. I think likely the Communist Party has some influence inside BlackRock and trading favors with BlackRock to give them this license to operate a whole.
Emma Muehlman is an analyst at Ascend Investment Management. She says much of what BlackRock does caters to retirement plans and that China has an aging demographic.
And, no one should be invested in China. They've hit the education sector, they've hit the gaming, and they're going after now start looking like they're going to start cracking down on healthcare. So it's just they're going down the line of public companies.
This comes as BlackRock raises around $1 billion in China, the first foreign firm to do so. In under a week, the BlackRock China New Horizon Mixed Securities Investment Fund got over 111,000 investment orders. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Now let's turn to a dispute between China and the United States, and the U.S. appears to have won the recent standoff. At the heart of the issue, a complaint from Beijing over America's tariffs on solar panel imports. In 2018, President Trump imposed steep tariffs on imported solar panels to protect domestic industry, and both China and South Korea have been protesting against the measure. But Beijing didn't take the action lying down and asked the World Trade Organization to decide whether the tariffs have violated the international trade rules. But the WTO later ruled in America's favor. The tariffs will expire next February. And that's all for today's China in Focus. But before you go, we have a short announcement. We have our premiere at 9:30 p.m. from Monday to Saturday on TV and on our YouTube channel. NTD is available on many platforms, including cable TV, satellite, and over-the-air TV across the U.S., and it continues to grow. Please check out ntd.com/TV. Type in your zip code to find all the ways you can watch our show. That's ntd.com/TV. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.